She was crying when I first met her, sitting cross-legged in the hallway outside a seminar, knees tucked into a beige power suit that didn't quite fit her yet. Her laptop was cracked. She'd just lost her internship, and she said between short, angry breaths, "If one more rich daddy's boy cuts in line to success, I'm going to lose it." I should have walked past, but I didn't. I bought her a new laptop 2 days later. That was how it started. One broken MacBook and one pretty, furious 26-year-old who looked at me like I was the first person who actually listened. I was 43 then, quietly retired from my second company, mostly doing advisory work. No kids, no spouse, a condo I didn't decorate and a calendar I didn't fill. She filled it fast. Her name was Nora, and she made ambition look like religion. She had these sharp little post-its stuck all over her tiny apartment. Quotes, lists, future office ideas. The first time I saw one that said CEO before 35, I smiled. The second time, I paid her tuition. She said it wasn't charity, it was a partnership. I wasn't investing in her. I was investing in them. That was the word she used. Them. "You believe in me more than anyone ever has," she said, eyes wide, glass of Malbec shaking slightly in her hand. "And when I make it, I'm dragging you up with me." So I paid. The executive MBA, the accelerator program in Paris, the strategic leadership retreat in Vancouver. I footed the bill for an apartment 2 blocks from her campus, modern, open plan, with one of those ridiculous espresso makers that costs more than my first car. She said it was important for networking. And you know what? I believed her. In fact, I believed everything. That we were building a future. That her gratitude meant something real. That the way she curled up beside me on Sunday mornings wasn't just comfort, it was loyalty. I wasn't naive. I just chose not to question. Because when someone tells you they can't do it without you, you want to believe it. She'd come back from each of those trips glowing. "The investors loved my pitch," she'd say, curling into my side. I was the only woman in the room, and I crushed them. I'd nod, beam, tell her how proud I was. And every time, she'd whisper, "Just wait. You'll see. When my company takes off, you'll be the first name in my story." Funny thing, when someone says they're going to change the world, you don't expect to be the first thing they erase. 6 years. That's how long I paid. Rough estimate, close to $400,000. I didn't keep a ledger at first, and I never asked her to sign anything. Why would I? You don't ask someone you love to sign receipts for their dreams. By the 3rd year, I'd given up the city condo and moved into a quieter rental across the river. Less noise, more space for her to focus. She said the commute was symbolic. "You're giving me freedom." And when she got accepted into her dream firm's mentorship pipeline, she said it again, "You're why I'm here. You're my foundation." So I kept being the foundation. Quiet, stable, supportive. She handled the champagne and startup launches. I handled the tax filings and mortgage approvals. And every time she posted some glamorous update online, her and a client on a yacht, her speaking at a tech panel, I hit like and typed, "Proud of you, always." Most of you reading this probably already see where this is going. But don't scroll yet. Trust me, it doesn't go where you think. And if you've been through anything even remotely like this, if you've been the silent sponsor, the background investor, the man someone only saw after they got what they wanted, do me a favor, tap that subscribe button. You'd be surprised how many of us are out here, quiet as hell, just watching, until we aren't. Anyway, there were signs. Looking back, they weren't even subtle. Like how she stopped introducing me as her partner and started saying, "a close friend." Or how she'd forget to invite me to mixers because it's a small venue, and they're all VCs, not spouses. I remember one night, she came home late from some rooftop after-party in a borrowed designer blazer. Her cheeks flushed, eyes glazed over. "Everything okay?" I asked. She kissed me on the forehead like I was a golden retriever and said, "You're so good to me. I just wish I could find a version of you younger." That should have been my cue. But instead of walking away, I asked if she was hungry. Made her eggs. Told myself she was just tired. Because when someone tells you you're the reason for their success, you forget to wonder what happens when they decide they've succeeded enough to leave you behind. And she did, right after the biggest moment of her life. But we'll get there. I promise. She spilled half her coffee on the table when the call came. I was wiping my glasses, thinking about lawn fertilizer, when she shrieked and nearly knocked over the French press. "Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Yes. I accept," she shouted into her phone, pacing like a CEO who already had the corner office. I looked up and gave her a confused smile. "Everything okay?" She didn't hear me, or pretended not to. When she finally hung up, She spun around and launched herself into my arms like she hadn't mentally moved out 3 months ago. They offered me the job. The job. 6 figures starting, relocation package, full autonomy. I did it. She grabbed my cheeks, kissed me hard, then danced around the kitchen like a game show contestant. I stood there, still holding the sugar spoon. That's incredible, I said. I knew you'd get it. Of course she did. She always does. And I always pay. We went out to dinner that night. Her idea. A sleek new place that charged for bread and had art so abstract it looked like printer errors. She was wearing a black silk dress that barely moved when she did. I remember the way her earrings sparkled under the pendant light. I remember the way her tone changed with the second glass of wine. She wasn't celebrating. She was rehearsing. We've been through so much together, she started. It sounded like a eulogy. You've genuinely been amazing. Better than I deserved. I blinked. Okay. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Not affectionately, more like a boss reassuring an intern before firing him. But the truth is, I'm entering a different league now. New circles. I'll be traveling constantly, strategizing with people who, well, you know, operate at a different level. I was still half smiling, waiting for the punchline. You're too small for the world I'm about to enter, she said. Calm. Practiced. Like she was breaking up with an old gym membership. I don't remember putting my fork down. I remember the bread knife. It was still smeared with butter, and I stared at it longer than I should have. I want a divorce, she added, taking another sip of wine. Don't take it personally. Right. Just a quarterly adjustment to the portfolio. I need someone sharper. Higher status. Someone who can mirror me in a room. You understand. I nodded. Or maybe I didn't. I think my neck just gave up. So what? You're leaving me because your LinkedIn title changed. She gave a soft laugh. Don't reduce it to that. This is evolution. And I need a partner who reflects that. I didn't say anything. Because what do you say when someone rebrands your entire existence as a phase they outgrew? She reached for the check like it was a formality. I let her pay. Why not? She'd already cashed in everything else. On the drive home, she hummed a jazz tune she didn't even like before her executive pivot. At the apartment, she handed me a small manila envelope with some paperwork she'd prepped. No pressure. Just review when you're ready. Let's keep it mature. Right. Mature. Like adult circumcision. I left that night. Not in a scene. Not even with anger. Just a weird stillness. Like I'd been cut loose mid-orbit and hadn't realized I was drifting yet. Back at the rental across the river, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the corkboard full of her startup notes, VC lists, affirmations. All funded by me. All already irrelevant. She'd leveled up and left the tutorial behind. But what she didn't realize, what made me sit down and finally start opening folders on my old desktop, was that I hadn't built her to be untouchable. I'd built her to be traceable. And she'd just handed me every reason to prove it. I packed in silence. No shouting. No thrown lamps. Not even a snide comment. Just folded clothes into the same suitcase I used to haul her marketing binders to pitch meetings. Funny, at the time, she called me her secret weapon. Now I was just excess luggage. She came home midway through. Didn't even ask where I was going. Just floated through the door in heels that cost more than a weekend trip, talking on the phone to someone named Brandon about a rooftop launch party. She looked at my half-empty closet and said, "If you need help with storage logistics, my assistant can handle it." Then closed the door to take her call in peace. I didn't reply. I just rolled up the last of her startup branded hoodies and left them on the bed. She loved those hoodies. Said they made her look like a real disruptor. Whatever the hell that meant. By the time I left, she had already begun hosting her new era crowd in the apartment I'd paid 2 years in advance for. The same wine fridge I installed to celebrate her first keynote speech was now background noise for her flirty laugh and soft jazz. I saw the photos online. She didn't block me. Probably didn't think she had to. I wasn't a threat. I was history. Endings can be graceful, she told a mutual friend who didn't know better than to repeat it to me. Some people just hold space until they're no longer needed. That's maturity. She said that with a straight face. About the man who skipped his own sabbatical so she could attend a fintech summit in Zurich. She even posted a photo of herself toasting with some junior executive, captioned, "To new chapters and clean breaks." Clean break. That was her favorite phrase for it. Like we were splitting a bar tab, not 6 years of her climbing on my shoulders to reach every rung of her career. I didn't reply, didn't post a thing, didn't counter. She took that as closure. Her lawyer sent a warm-toned email. "My client is eager to keep things amicable and efficient. She values your generosity and hopes to proceed swiftly with minimal stress for both parties." Swiftly. Minimal stress. Sure, they requested an asset list. A soft, casual one. Just what I had personally acquired during the marriage. I smiled when I read that line. Personally acquired. Apparently, the apartment doesn't count, since the deed is in her name, she says. Never mind whose money traced every dollar on the wire transfer, or that I'm still the one listed on the condo association insurance. Small details. Then there were her business expenses, labeled under independent expenditures, as if the international flights, brand consulting, coaching packages, and designer wardrobes weren't all routed through my business credit line. As if I hadn't absorbed every tax risk so she could strut into every networking gala looking like she belonged. Her lawyer had no clue. Not yet. She told him, he's always been fair. He'll want a clean break too. He knows how much this matters to me. Oh, I did. She thought I'd walk away the same way I entered her life. Quietly, conveniently, wallet first. She thought I'd fold like a foundation and disappear beneath the empire she built on top of me. But the thing about foundations? When they move, the whole thing cracks. So I let her play host. Let her friends laugh in my old kitchen. Let her date some Ivy League golden boy who probably thought her company was self-funded. I let her look in the mirror and see a woman who outgrew her roots. And the entire time, I said nothing. Because you can't fight a storm while it's still building. You wait until they think the sun's out, then pull the roof. She assumed silence meant surrender. It didn't. It meant calculation. The rental I moved into was small, quiet, and smelled vaguely like cedar and resignation. No art on the walls, just a fold-out table, a coffee pot, and a dusty bookshelf holding titles she once called irrelevant to modern leadership. Perfect. I didn't need inspiration. I needed silence. A space where nothing moved unless I told it to. So I sat at that table one night, cracked open my old Lenovo, slow but reliable, and pulled up 6 years' worth of digital bones. Receipts. Wire transfers. Invoices I once filed as support. I didn't flinch. Not when I saw the $19,860 coaching session labeled Spiritual Brand Alignment. Not at the $6,300 networking dinner in Rome with exactly 0 follow-up contacts. Not even when I stumbled across the Venmo notes she clearly forgot were public. Private yacht with M and the French boy's face blowing a kiss. Weekend escape. He doesn't suspect a thing kiss mark. And my personal favorite, champagne therapy. Sponsored smirking face money with wings. I didn't rage. Didn't scream. I started organizing. Neatly. Like a tax auditor with a personal vendetta. I bought folders, actual manila ones. Labeled each by year, category, and event. Education, $142,000. Housing, $82,500. Professional wardrobe, $11,300 and counting. Travel and international development opportunities, north of $60,000. Every line item now had a timestamp. Every expense, a category. Every luxury billed to the life of a man she'd already deleted from her narrative. I didn't start with a plan for court. I started with a simple question. What would happen if I treated her like a client I needed to cut loose? And that's when I found it. Buried inside the PDFs she'd sent me for review during her onboarding to the consulting firm. At the time, I remember her saying, just sign this, standard background verification stuff. They're mostly looking for financial liabilities. She didn't realize I actually read the clause on page 19. A declaration of moral conduct. Specifically, all executive-level hires must demonstrate personal and professional integrity over the last 5 years. Failure to disclose material relationships or misrepresentations during prior financial arrangements may result in immediate revocation of offer. She'd left that part unchecked. At the time, I remember saying, "You're listing yourself as self-funded?" She shrugged. "It sounds better. No one wants to hear boyfriend played patron." She never updated it. Never clarified the truth. She even signed a compliance affidavit. I had the time-stamped copy sitting in my inbox. So I printed it, highlighted the clause, labeled it Exhibit A. Then I started digging deeper, not out of malice, but precision. I scoured old shared drives, scraped backup iCloud albums she forgot I had access to, and found photo sets from her intensive leadership retreat in Capri. Interesting retreat, considering I counted 4 shirtless men in every frame, none of whom were facilitators. In one particularly telling photo, she's poolside with a man twice her age, hand resting dangerously close to territory that had nothing to do with team building. Caption, client development smiling face with horns cocktail glass. Another labeled, workshop ends at noon, real work begins smirking face. I built a subfolder, reputational risk. 8 gigabytes of photos, DMs, and itinerary overlaps that painted a very clear picture of what those networking trips really entailed. Some of the timestamps even overlapped with key interview phases for her new job. That's what gave me the idea to pair each photo with her calendar events. Some of them had conflicting time zones. Others showed back-to-back bookings that were impossible unless she had a teleportation device or a clone. Either way, her credibility was toast. Then I checked the funding sources. And that's when the whole thing clicked. Most of the larger transactions had gone through a trust account I set up years ago. One she didn't realize was still registered under my legal advisement. Every tuition payment, every housing allowance, every reimbursed flight, routed through my tax records. Not hers. Mine. I wasn't her sponsor. I was her silent CFO. And if she was smart, she'd have listed that. But she didn't. Which meant the moment I turned this folder over, her employment offer was void. Not because of what she did, but because of what she claimed she didn't. That was the game now. Not vengeance. Not spite. Just truth. Clean, chronological, indisputable truth. And the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had no idea I was building the one thing she couldn't talk her way out of. She posted the photo 2 minutes after midnight. A champagne flute in one hand, city skyline behind her, one leg slightly lifted like she'd just been swept into a Hollywood ending. The caption read, "First week as strategy partner. Rooftop views. Grateful to all who helped me get here. Bottle with popping cork sparkles." I looked at it from my kitchen table in the rental. Same spot I'd sorted the receipts. Same seat I'd eaten leftover spaghetti for the 3rd night straight. I stared at her smug little half-smile and thought, "You really think this is your victory lap, don't you?" The comments rolled in like she was royalty. "Iconic queen. You deserve it all. Built this life with no handouts. Respect. Marry me," already faced with tears of joy. The last one was from a guy named Evan. She used to complain about his breath during panel discussions. Apparently, his mouth improved the moment I wasn't in the picture. I didn't comment. Didn't like. Just downloaded the image and added it to a new folder. Narrative versus evidence. Then I opened my inbox and found the subject line I'd been expecting. Petition for alimony consideration. Urgent response requested. Her lawyer had finally pulled the trigger. The attached file used phrases like emotional labor and non-compensated spousal investment. There was even a section where they cited psychological toll during high-stress business decisions. The best part? They included screenshots of her old text messages, ones where she thanked me for believing in her during her lowest points, as proof that I'd agreed to support her lifestyle long-term. My lifestyle, apparently, had been an asterisk. There was also a requested financial disclosure form, neatly formatted, with checkboxes for assets, income, expected future growth. She'd checked nearly every box on her side as not applicable or private LLC holdings. She assumed mine would be open like it always had been. She really believed she could wipe the slate clean and invoice me for the soap. I didn't get mad. I smiled. Actually smiled. Printed out the email. Slid it into folder number 4, legal positioning. Then I called my lawyer. I didn't have to explain much. She'd been with me through the funding years. Watched me pay for mentorship programs that were little more than Instagram retreats. Watched me add Nora to insurance plans, emergency contact lists, and business accounts. All quietly, all in good faith. And now, that same woman had the gall to file for alimony on top of it. When I told her about the folder, my lawyer paused. "How detailed are we talking?" "Chronological. With annotations," I said. I even color-coded the trust fund overlaps. Another pause, then a small chuckle. "Okay. Then we won't rush. Let her walk into that courtroom thinking she's already won." And that's exactly what Nora did. She kept posting, kept parading around like she'd escaped gravity. Her stories were filled with event photos, fancy finger food, brand activations, glasses clinking above centerpieces I knew she couldn't afford without me. She moved into a high-rise she captioned, "Finally a place that matches my energy." She forgot the part where the loan paperwork still listed me as the guarantor, because I'd helped her apply back when her credit score couldn't get her a library card. The irony wasn't lost on me. How many of her so-called independent victories were financed on the back of my anonymity? That was the beauty of it. She thought silence meant surrender, thought absence meant erasure. She didn't notice the fine print, didn't read the loan documents closely enough to realize who signed on the second page, didn't check the routing numbers, didn't realize her promotion packet included a personal integrity clause, because who reads those? Certainly not someone who believes the rules don't apply to them. And so she marched forward, heels clicking confidently toward a courtroom she believed was already hers. She was walking into a celebration. I was walking in with a case file. And that was the difference. The cracks didn't start with a bang. They started with a brunch. Sunday morning, one of her firm's junior partners, kid named Zach, barely 30, jaw like a shampoo commercial, posted a boomerang on Instagram. Just a quick clink of mimosa glasses, blurry rooftop view. Nora laughing too hard for that early in the day. Most people saw a cute, casual post. But not everyone. One of the firm's clients, an old-school guy with sharp lines and a sharper memory, noticed something else. Zach's hand was resting on her thigh. Hers wasn't moving it. That same day, someone from HR called her. "We're getting a lot of eyes on your public presence lately. Just standard optics review for partner track profiles. We'll need some background documentation by Friday. Shouldn't take more than a minute or two." She told them, of course, nothing to worry about. Her voice didn't crack, but she opened the wine early that day. Then came the second tap, this time from compliance. "Hey, Nora. Quick follow-up. We're doing a retroactive audit on partner disclosures. Just routine. Could you send over your 5-year income breakdown, self-funded business history, and any support statements from prior partnerships? Also, the apartment deed. Legal wants to confirm there's no pending lien or third-party claim." That was the moment she paused. The apartment. The one she just finished redecorating in ivory and chrome. The one she called her throne. The deed was in her name. Yes, but the mortgage? The underwriting? The security guarantee? All me. See, back when she was applying, she didn't meet the firm's income threshold alone. The bank needed a secondary signature. She asked me to sign just to get through approval. Said I could remove myself once her salary cleared. She never did. Her name is on the title, but I own the debt. And guess who the bank contacts when a background check gets flagged? Meanwhile, I was sitting in my rental with a spreadsheet open, matching line items from her old reimbursement requests to my business tax returns. Did you know that if someone misclassifies personal travel as business on your tax ID and then pretends they self-funded it, that's not just unethical. It's criminal if filed under sworn employment documents? I knew. She didn't. The best part? She was still posting, still smiling at panel discussions, still tagging #selfmade under every photo. Meanwhile, her lawyer quietly requested a phone call with mine. Just a few clarifications. Mine declined. "We'll clarify in court." 3 nights before the hearing, she emailed me directly. Subject line: "Let's avoid unnecessary mess." The message was short. "I don't want things to escalate. You've always been reasonable. I'm hoping you still are. Let's talk privately." No greeting. No apology. Just that brittle executive tone, like this was just another quarterly misalignment. I didn't respond. She sent a follow-up the next day. "Please don't make this ugly. We're both professionals. Let's handle it like adults." I forwarded it to my lawyer. She flagged it. She's nervous. She knows something's coming. She just doesn't know what. And she was right. The firm's compliance team contacted her again. "There's an inconsistency between your onboarding affidavit and some third-party disclosures. We'll need a signed amendment before your partner status can be finalized." That same evening, her Instagram went dark. No more rooftop toasts. No mimosa boomerangs. No smiling selfies in the firm's marble lobby. Just silence. But silence, in her case, wasn't peace. It was panic. Because that confident little house of cards she'd been living in, propped up by captions and curated LinkedIn posts, was starting to tilt. And she didn't know where the wind was coming from. She thought the courtroom would be a formality. She thought I'd just sit there, quietly absorbing the hit, then disappearing back into irrelevance. She had no idea the hit was coming from my side. And if you've ever been discarded after building someone's future, if you've ever watched them smile while standing on the shoulders they swore they didn't need anymore, you're going to want to stick around. Because what happens in court? She never saw it coming. She arrived in white. A perfectly tailored pantsuit, pearl earrings, heels that clicked like punctuation across the marble floor. She walked like a woman who'd already won. Beside her, her lawyer, tall, practiced, and radiating quiet smugness, held a thick portfolio under one arm. They looked like they were arriving for a brand launch, not a divorce hearing. She didn't look at me. I was already seated at the petitioner's table. No suit, no tie, just a navy jacket and the folder in my hand. Thin, neat, sealed in a plain clasp envelope. I looked up when she entered. She caught my eye for a second, blinked, then looked past me like I was a smudge on a glass door. "Mr. and Mrs. Wallace," the judge said, glancing down at the file. "I understand we're here to settle alimony and division of assets." Her lawyer rose smoothly. Yes, Your Honor. My client seeks a reasonable compensation package. During the marriage, she made career sacrifices, endured financial stress, and contributed emotional labor that enabled her partner's own professional flexibility. We believe a fair alimony schedule, as well as a proportional division of shared property and assets, reflects that contribution. The judge nodded. Is the defendant prepared to respond? I stood. No objections to her speaking first, I said calmly. But I do have one item for your review, Your Honor. It may clarify a few things. Her lawyer turned, annoyed. Nora's eyes narrowed, scanning my hands like I might suddenly produce a grenade. I walked up, placed the envelope gently on the bench. This contains a chronological financial ledger of our 6-year relationship. It includes receipts, bank records, trust fund withdrawals, and documentation tied to the respondent's employment onboarding at her current firm. The judge raised an eyebrow. Trust fund withdrawals? I nodded. All under my management. She's been drawing from it since 2018. Unaware, I believe, that the fund was traceable. There's also a signed affidavit included, part of her job acceptance packet. It contains discrepancies I think the court will find relevant. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Your Honor, I wasn't made aware of any such documents during discovery. Correct, I cut in. Because none of it was contested. I wasn't contesting until now. The room shifted. Not loudly, but perceptibly. Like someone cracked a window, and the cold air changed everything. The judge opened the envelope. First page, the affidavit. His eyes scanned it. Flipped once. Twice. Then he paused. Read it again. Her lawyer shifted beside her. Nora didn't move, but I saw her hand tighten around her pen. She tilted slightly forward like she was trying to see the paper without appearing to. The judge raised a brow, glanced down the bench, then looked up at me. You compiled this yourself? Yes. With legal counsel and forensic accounting to verify amounts. You'll find corroborating documents in the back, filed by transaction date. He hummed quietly, flipping to the next section. Her lawyer leaned toward her and whispered something. She didn't respond. Then the judge said something that cracked the courtroom's atmosphere clean down the middle. Mrs. Wallace, is it accurate that you claim to be fully self-funded during your employment onboarding? Her face froze mid-expression. Not denial, not confusion, just pure stall, like she was rebooting behind her eyes. My client has stated, her lawyer jumped in, that she received non-material support from her former spouse in a private capacity. Nothing legally binding or formally declared. The judge held up the affidavit. This isn't private capacity. This is sworn documentation submitted to a regulatory licensed employer. And this folder, he tapped the stack, suggests significant funding sourced directly from the petitioner's personal and business accounts over a period of several years. Silence. Long, thick silence. Her lawyer opened his mouth, closed it. The judge flipped another page. Also seeing here, trust fund distributions routed to property purchases, specifically, the downtown unit the respondent currently occupies, registered under her name, but the loan originator and co-signer appears to be. He paused. Mr. Wallace? I nodded once. Correct. I carry the debt. She carries the title. More silence. Nora was motionless now. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared down like the wood grain on the desk had started telling secrets. I think, the judge said quietly, we'll need a recess before proceeding. He closed the folder, set it down like it was radioactive. And for the first time, Nora looked at me. Not with anger, not with mockery, with something closer to math. Like she was recalculating the entire equation and realizing she'd added herself to the wrong side. And the hearing hadn't even really started yet. The courtroom was silent except for the rhythmic flick of pages turning, sharp, methodical, like the slow count of a detonator. The judge had stopped acknowledging the attorneys. His glasses were halfway down his nose, brows drawn low as he flipped from one printout to the next. Receipts, wire confirmations, notarized documents, scans of boarding passes that didn't match her travel claims, even screenshots of her own social posts, paired side by side with her affidavit. Nora didn't move. She hadn't since the recess ended. She'd returned to her seat slower than she left it. Gone was the crisp posture and high-octane confidence. She looked like someone trying not to throw up in church. Her lawyer leaned toward her again, whispering frantically. She didn't respond. Then came the moment. The judge let out a single breath, not a laugh, not quite, but something close. Then he looked up. Mrs. Wallace, he said, voice dry and deliberate. You claimed in this sworn affidavit. He lifted the document like it was Exhibit A in a murder trial. That you were fully self-funded at the time of your employment onboarding. You attested, in writing, that you had no financial entanglements with the petitioner. Is that correct? Nora opened her mouth, closed it. The lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, the affidavit refers to primary income at the time of employment, not historic assistance. The judge cut him off without even lifting his hand. Funny, he said, almost smiling now, because according to this folder, your client had been drawing from Mr. Wallace's trust fund for nearly 6 years. Not as a gift, as part of a structured payment plan he established for her professional development, tuition, business capital, housing. In fact, he flipped another page. Here we are, 2 different overseas retreats listed under LLC expenses, but reimbursed through Wallace Business Holdings, which your client never listed on her financial disclosures. Nora shifted in her chair like the air had thickened around her. I believe the clause in her employment agreement clearly states that any omission or misrepresentation regarding financial dependencies, particularly those with potential conflicts of interest, could constitute grounds for immediate termination, the judge continued. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight was in the words themselves. Heavy, precise, and worse, he added. There's evidence here that Ms. Wallace claimed a self-funded business investment portfolio which, in reality, was capitalized through Mr. Wallace's legally retained accounts. That's more than a personal matter. That's fraud under compliance standards. Her lawyer stood, flustered. Your Honor, if I may, this is wildly beyond the scope of a divorce hearing. Oh, I agree, the judge said, calmly closing the folder. Which is why I'll be referring this to regulatory review, as well as flagging the employment contract in question. I suspect her firm will want to reevaluate certain assumptions. You could feel the temperature drop. Nora's hands were visibly trembling now. She reached for her water, missed the cup on the first try, then gave up. Her face had gone pale, ashy almost. No amount of foundation could cover what was unraveling underneath. Her lawyer sat slowly, adjusting his cuffs like he could stitch the moment back together with posture. The judge leaned back in his chair and looked directly at her. You came here claiming emotional burden, financial imbalance, and a right to compensation, he said. And yet, every document here suggests your lifestyle, your career trajectory, your housing, your brand, was carried by the very man you claimed to have outgrown. You didn't just forget the ladder you climbed. You tried to burn it and soothe the ashes. A soft gasp from the back row. Someone, the junior partner, maybe, stood up halfway, then sat back down like he didn't want to be seen next to her anymore. I didn't smile, didn't move, just watched. Because there's a certain kind of silence that tells you everything's finally clicking into place. The realization that the empire she paraded around was funded entirely by the man she now pretended was irrelevant. And now the courtroom knew. The judge gestured to the clerk. We'll proceed with asset evaluation and cost recovery in light of these findings. I'll issue a formal statement after lunch. He rose. Court is adjourned for recess. The gavel didn't slam. It didn't need to. The sound of her reputation collapsing was louder. The judge returned from recess with a coffee in hand and the same sealed folder I'd handed over hours earlier, only now it looked like a verdict wearing a paperclip. He sat down slowly, adjusted his glasses, and didn't even glance at her lawyer before speaking. Before we resume, he said, flipping casually through a few more pages, I just want to make sure I've got the facts straight. Mrs. Wallace, you presented yourself to this court as an independent, self-funded professional. Claimed hardship, imbalance, emotional burden. Declared the petitioner. He motioned toward me. As a passive supporter. She said nothing. Yet here, in your own hand, he continued, I have signed affidavits stating otherwise. Proof of dependency on his trust fund accounts. Mortgage filings with his signature. Business reimbursements routed through his LLC. Sworn employment documents contradicting every financial statement your counsel just submitted. He turned a page slowly, savoring it. And you called him too small. There was a chuckle buried in his voice now. Not cruel. Just tired amusement, the kind reserved for people who think they're playing chess while accidentally eating the pieces. You're sitting in this courtroom, he said, because of his financial umbrella. Everything from your education to your current address is traceable to this man's accounts. Without it, you wouldn't meet your firm's employment requirements, wouldn't have qualified for your current mortgage, and, based on these inconsistencies, you now owe federal back taxes on misrepresented income totaling just under $84,000. Her face collapsed in on itself like a crumbling souffle. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. And just so we're all on the same page, he held up a single sheet, her signed onboarding declaration. Submitting false financial information to a regulatory compliant consulting firm? That's not a gray area, Mrs. Wallace. That's immediate grounds for review. As if on cue, the courtroom doors opened. A woman in a gray suit walked briskly toward her attorney and handed him an envelope. He read it, blinked twice, then passed it to Nora without a word. She unfolded it slowly. Her hands shook. The letterhead was unmistakable, her firm's logo, black and silver, crisp and unforgiving. The first line, due to recently surfaced documentation and legal proceedings under public record, your current employment status is hereby suspended pending formal review of all disclosures submitted during onboarding. Her dream job, gone, just like that. And it didn't end there. From the back row, a man stood, Zach, the junior partner, looking like he'd just walked into a funeral in swim trunks. He stared at her like she'd spontaneously combusted. Like the woman he'd been clinking glasses with last weekend no longer existed. Wait, he muttered. You lied about all of this? She turned to him, mouth half open, eyes frantic. I didn't lie, I didn't think. Didn't think what? That it mattered. He took a step back, then another. Like proximity alone might contaminate his career. Her lawyer was frantically rifling through papers now, looking for some clause, some lifeline. But it was over. The judge had already turned his attention elsewhere, calling the next procedural item. Nora was no longer a person in the room. She was a file, a number, a collapse in motion. And through it all, I didn't speak. I didn't move. Because what was there to say? The woman who said I was beneath her was now watching her reflection shatter on every professional surface she'd polished. Her reputation? Hollowed. Her job? Suspended. Her romantic safety net? Walking away, hands raised like he'd just witnessed a crime. And her lawyer? Quietly closing his binder like it might protect him from the fallout. In a room full of silence, only one thing rang out louder than the gavel. The sound of Nora realizing, too late, that the man she erased had documented everything. Not out of vengeance, out of precision. And now, the world she built on top of him was ash. I stood when the judge did. Not in a rush. Not for dramatics. Just slow, steady, finished. I closed my folder, now half its original size after submission, nodded once toward the bench, and said quietly, "Thank you, Your Honor." My voice didn't shake. It didn't need to rise. It had already done its work. I turned toward the exit, the cold air from the hallway starting to roll in as the courtroom doors were opened by a bailiff who'd stopped making eye contact with her 20 minutes earlier. And then she broke. "Wait, please, can we talk?" It cracked out of her like a cough, unplanned and desperate. I stopped, not because I cared what she had to say, but because I wanted to mark the moment. The exact second she realized her story didn't end on the rooftop with champagne and hashtags. It ended here, in a half-empty courtroom where nobody was clapping, and every word she spoke was now part of a public transcript. I didn't turn around, just looked sideways, enough to see her shape, not her eyes. "You were right," I said, voice flat. "We weren't equal." She didn't speak. Not yet. Maybe she thought I was conceding. I wasn't. I was building a future, I said. You were spending it. Then I walked. No grand exit. No last glance. Just footsteps echoing across a floor she once glided over in heels, and now barely had the strength to stand on. Behind me, the shuffle of her lawyer quietly packing up. No whispering now. No strategies. No rebuttals. Just the sound of a man calculating billable hours on a case that had turned radioactive. She didn't follow. Couldn't. Her job was suspended. Her accounts were flagged. The apartment she bragged about online, under review. The assets she thought she'd leave with, frozen until further notice. She wasn't a strategist anymore. She was a liability with good lighting. And as I crossed the threshold of the courtroom, I turned just once. Not for her, but for the judge. He was still seated, flipping the folder closed with the faintest trace of a smirk on his face. Not cruelty. Not mockery. Just that rare smile people give when they see justice take a shape they didn't expect. But no was earned. He met my eyes. Nodded once. And that was it. There's a silence that settles after the storm. It isn't peace. It isn't joy. It's just clarity. She got everything she chased. Until the fine print caught up. And by then, the man she'd underestimated had already walked out the door.